Ladies and gentlemen, Happy New Year. Hope you guys had a wonderful holiday with family and friends. In this video, I'm going to talk about a bunch of stuff that I learned about college recruiting in 2024. And this is going to be a recap of really the whole year and the landscape of college recruiting and the stuff that we're going to be doubling down on as we head into 2025. And then I'm going to make another video after this that's going to be a little bit more tactical and actionable and talk about, video and email and social media and some of the things that we're going to be focusing on as we head into the new year. So the first thing that I learned from college recruiting in 2024 is that you can't be half in, half out and expect to get results. Now, this applies in a couple different ways. The first way that this applies is that you can't have 1 foot in, 1 foot out, meaning that you're just pouring a little bit of time into this, not all of your time or effort or energy, and expect to get results. If you're half in, half out, those families tend to not get very much interest. And we've worked with a lot of families this year, and it just seems like a winner-take-all arena. The families who make a game plan, execute on the game plan, follow it, make adjustments, and stick with it for a longer period of time, meaning 6+ months, those are the families that succeed. And the families that expect to get quick results in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or even as little as like 3 months, families that expect to get results like that and then they get disheartened when that doesn't happen and then they give up and they just sort of detach from the whole process, those are the families that seem to struggle in the process. And so college recruiting, with all the things that are making it so hard to get recruited nowadays, with the transfer portal and NIL and roster caps and junior college and the eligibility, updates that came out, it just feels like with this landscape, you can no longer take this easy. If you really want this, you have to go get it. Because you got to remember, and this is one of the things I'm going to talk about, toward the end, that I learned from 2024 is that scholarships are worth a lot of money. And I know it sounds weird to say that I learned that, but when it happens over and over again, we've had a lot of families get scholarships this year, some of them worth over $100,000. Anytime that you have that much money in the conversation, you're going to have people taking this very, very seriously. And it just feels like the mountain is getting higher and higher and colder, and it's just harder to navigate through, and people want those opportunities really badly. And the families that want them, the most badly are the families that are probably going to get them and going to get those results. Now, the other way that half in, half out makes sense and kind of how I think about this is an example would be, I talked to a family in the beginning of 2024. We were working with a family, and it just felt like every time that we recommended something to this family, they did about half of what we asked them to do, and the other half, they did whatever they thought was right. Now, it's a little strange to pay somebody, money and then not necessarily listen to what they have to say, but it just goes to show, and we've seen this a few different times with some families, that if you only do half of what somebody says, you can't really expect to get results with that. And it feels like you should get half the results if you do half of what they say, but it just doesn't work like that. It feels like if you're missing a piece, the whole thing crumbles, and it gets frustrating because then people think that it's, maybe your system or something like that, and it's just not. They didn't do what we said. There was one, I remember I got a message, there was this family, and they asked me what they should do, and so I told them what they should do. And he came back a couple weeks later and he's like, so that didn't work. And I said, oh, did you do X, Y, Z? And he said, well, I did X and Y, but I didn't do Z. And I said, okay, you need to go do Z. And he was like, yeah, but it feels weird to do Z. And I was like, all right, then don't do it. But he went and he did it, and he came back and he goes, oh, it worked, thanks. It's like, yeah, because it's the entire alphabet. In order to make words, you need A through Z. You need the whole alphabet. And when people just pull out A, B, and C and think that they're getting the full alphabet when they're only getting 3 letters, it gets frustrating. And so half in, half out, man, if you're going to go do something, you got to do it all the way. And that goes for, sure, working with us, but even not working with us, just being in college recruiting, you have to do it all the way. If you're going to go make this happen, make it happen. Pour everything you have into it. I can tell you that it is more than worth it. Not just financially, sure. Saving tens of thousands of dollars on college, maybe more than that. is great, but getting your kid to an amazing school, getting a great education, setting them up for the rest of their lives, giving them life experiences that they'll remember forever, making lifetime friends, those are priceless. Like, those things are incredible. Like, give this everything that you have. If you don't want it, if your kid doesn't want it, that's totally fine. Back out, all good. But if you do want it, you have to give it everything because it deserves that and it requires that. The second thing that I learned is about expectation and being realistic. And so we get a lot of families who will say something like, I know that my kid isn't top level D1. I'm realistic. I know my kid isn't top level D1, but I think they're a D1 player. And the nicest way that I can put this is just saying that your kid isn't top level D1 doesn't necessarily mean that you are realistic, because 99% of kids are not top level D1. So you saying that your kid isn't top level D1, but you think they're still D1 caliber, you might still not be realistic because maybe they aren't D1 caliber, right? Like, there's very few high school players nowadays who are good enough to step right into a D1 program, and even less than that, who are going to end up playing for that D1 program in the first year, right? And so people think, well, if I just go shoot for super high and say, yeah, my kid's not here, that I'm being realistic. But no, like, your kid might not be here, they might be here. And that's hard for parents to hear, but you have to understand that college coaches are now getting the ability to go recruit college players who are 1, 2, 3 years older than your high school kid right now. They're bigger, faster, stronger. They've played against collegiate competition. They have a greater breadth of work to evaluate, so it's not as risky. They can step on campus next year. It's not 2 or 3 years from now. And so there's just a lot more risk associated with going and getting a high school player. And so I think it's just important. I just heard a lot of families say this, thinking that they were being realistic because their kid isn't top level D1. Like, yeah, in a lot of cases, it's obvious, right? In a lot of cases. But even just saying that your kid is a D1 caliber player, your kid might be a D1 caliber player. But there's a level of realism that I think is above what most parents think they are. And I know that might sound harsh, but it's something that I learned in 2024. We had 3,000 parents apply to schedule a call with us. We talked to a lot of parents this year. And so we have a pretty good idea of the nature of college recruiting, talent levels, what people are going through, what parents think of their kids. And that was one of the things that I learned. The third thing that I learned is that you need more volume. And this applies to basically everything. So when you are making recruiting videos, sending emails, posting on social media, what's required is dramatically more than what people think, right? People think making a 3-minute highlight video is enough. It's not enough. People think that sending 30 emails to college coaches is enough. It's not enough. People think that posting once a month to social media is enough. It's not enough. And so I'm not here to make you, to spread sunshine and daisies and just tell you what you want to hear. I want to tell you the truth. And the reality is that with recruiting the way it is nowadays, you can't operate like that. You simply have to send more. And just to reset your barometer of how much is required to do well in recruiting nowadays, I'll just give you a couple quick metrics that we try to reach, and then you can judge that however you want to. So in terms of video, we recommend families have a bare minimum of 40 clips. That would be short clips, 5, 10, 20, 30 seconds, something like that. A bare minimum of 40. If it's less than 40, get a little bit nervous, okay? The families who have the most interest or offers, we call them top performers, not because they're necessarily the best athletes or the most talented, but because they got the most amount of interest or offers. And so for us, that would be families who have a bare minimum of 20 schools or more that they're talking to. And so for those families, they average over 100 clips on their YouTube channel of video. When it comes to emails, we typically recommend the first email campaign that we send out. When we go to send out emails to schools, we recommend 100 schools, and that's just the first campaign. We offer up to 500 schools currently. I don't know if it'll be that way in the future, but currently we'll contact up to 500 schools. And when it comes to follow-ups, we usually send anywhere from 3 to 4 follow-ups, meaning if we contact 500 schools, we send 3 follow-ups. That's 3 emails to each school. 500 times 3 is 1,500 emails. And that's over the top. I understand if you're just doing this on your own, you don't have to do that necessarily. And I wouldn't expect you to go do that. But for us, this is literally all we do. And that's what we see in order to get results for people. And in terms of posting on social media, we shoot for 2 posts a week, something like that. Of course, it depends on whether you're in season or not in season. But my point with telling you all of this is that the recruiting process nowadays requires significantly more volume than you think. And it certainly did for me. When we started in 2024, I did not think that we were going to have to send this much volume to get the results that we do. But here we are. And so my guess is that that's simply going to continue as we head into 2025. And it will create a massive gap between the families that are able to do that and the families that are not able to do that. The fourth thing, those who quit fail. So the recruiting process does not happen fast. You're not probably, unless your kid's incredible, not going to get an offer in the first month. You might not even get interest in the first 3 months or 6 months. And the families who send out a campaign, don't get good results, and bail and don't send a second or a third or a fourth, the families that simply disengage, they are the ones who fail. It is not the ones who fail once or twice or 3 times with 3 campaigns, but stick with it for 6 to 12 months. Those families usually end up getting something, right? It's the families who completely disengage. And there are families who disengaged after, a month or 2 because they contacted all D1 schools and didn't get any interest. And then they were gone for 8 months, and then they came back when things started to really get hard and they were getting very late and they started to panic and they're like, oh shoot, we got to come back. But they missed 8 months worth of time and work, and it just makes the process so much harder, and there's way less opportunities at that point. And so I felt like it was a recurring theme, and it didn't happen a ton because we engage with a lot of our families. We actively get them to participate. But there are a few families that completely disengaged, and those are the ones who struggled in the process. And so those who quit fail. Keep putting one foot in front of the other. Just because it doesn't happen in 6 months or 9 months doesn't mean it won't happen in 12. And we've seen that time and again. The fifth one, the best players don't necessarily get the most interest. And this is an interesting one because you would think that's how it would go. We've had some players get 50 schools that they're talking to, 50 positive responses. We had one kid get, 80, and so we've generated a ton of interest for some players, and some of those players are not even necessarily the best players, right? And I think that's one thing that I had to learn is when we started all of this, years ago, I used to think that I could watch a video of a kid and know how much interest we were going to be able to get them. And a lot of parents hope this is true. They ask you to evaluate their kid because they want to know. They want an unbiased third party to tell them how good their kid is, right? And the challenge is that nobody has a crystal ball. We've talked to thousands of parents this year. I've seen so many highlight videos. I talked to a lot of college coaches, right? If anyone has an idea of a talent evaluation, I probably have a decent idea. And even I will tell you, I've been so wrong on so many accounts because guess what? I am not the one who makes those decisions on who gets scholarships and not. It's college coaches. And a lot of times recruiting is subjective. A college coach sees something that nobody else sees or needs something that's very unique. They are looking for something specific. And so there were players that came into our program, and I remember looking at the video and thinking, wow, it's going to be really hard to get this kid interest. And they end up doing really well and getting a ton of interest. And we go, a little surprised at that. And then there are kids who are really talented and we go, oh man, we're going to crush it for this family. And they might get interest, but they might not get as much as the kid who wasn't that good. We're like, how is that possible? And the reality is that we do not make the decisions on who gets scholarships and not. right? Our job is to put families in front of as many college coaches as we possibly can and market those kids to the best of our ability, meaning that we're shining the best possible light on the kids so that the coaches see the most value possible out of that player. And so it's just interesting to see that talent evaluation is a bit of a farce. Anybody who says that they know exactly where your kid belongs is absolutely lying to you, right? Even in my personal professional career, I had lots of coaches who said, well, you're not going to be a D1 player. I played D1. I had lots of coaches who said, well, you're not going to play professionally. I played professionally. I had lots of coaches who said, well, you're not going to be in pro ball for very long. You're only going to be in there for a year or two. I played 7 years, right? And so nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody really knows is the reality. And so I think the lesson for parents out of this is the only true way that you know how good your kid is to contact a lot of college coaches at all the levels and see which coaches respond well. And that's really the only way. You have to let the market decide because everything else is just a guess. And I'm not a big guesser. I don't like guessing in recruiting, especially when people pay us money. So I like to leave nothing up to chance, contact a whole bunch of schools at a whole bunch of different levels, and let college coaches tell us what they think. So that was an interesting thing that I learned as well. And I feel like I've been learning that lesson for a while now, but this year it seemed really prevalent. I mean, there were some kids that I really didn't think that we're going to get very much at all and ended up getting sizable scholarships. Let's say, $30,000 or more. And that's pretty cool, but also surprising. Scholarships are worth a lot of money is what I wrote down. And obviously, it just seems obvious that, of course, scholarships are worth a lot of money. But when it happens over and over and over again, we've had a lot of families get scholarships this year. It's been fantastic. You just realize how much money we're actually talking about. We're talking about scholarships. I mean, if you go to a school that's $20,000 a year in tuition, which nowadays would be a pretty relatively inexpensive school. There's a lot of schools that are way more expensive than that. And so if you take a very modest tuition of $20,000 a year and you take the bare minimum scholarship, which would be about 25%, then you're talking about $5,000 a year in scholarship. Over 4 years, it's $20,000. And that is a modest tuition with the bare minimum scholarship. You start talking about numbers like, well, it's $50,000 to go to school. And you get 40%, right? That's, do the math, $20,000 a year over 4 years is $80,000. $80,000. It's a lot of money that scholarships are worth. And that's why it makes it hard. One of the first things I talked about was half in, half out. Families that are not all in on this. I'm like, would you be all in if you knew that it was going to be worth $80,000 or $20,000? Probably. You'd probably be all in. And I think the only reason that families aren't is because it's not guaranteed, right? You can't guarantee that if you put in the time, if you put in the effort, if you spend the money, that it's absolutely going to happen. And so I think that causes families to not do that because they're like, but what if it doesn't happen? And I just don't believe that's a good way to go about life, is to say, well, what if it doesn't happen? I like to say, what if it does? And for a lot of families, it does. And so man, I just learned that again. I feel like I learn that every year, that scholarships are worth a lot of money, and it's a really big deal to get them. And the last thing that I learned in 2024 is our team is awesome. We have grown substantially. I don't like to share numbers about how big or small we are as a company. I just don't think it's necessary or relevant for someone making a decision on whether they're going to work with us or not. And if someone does feel like it's necessary, totally okay. You're welcome to go elsewhere. But I've just noticed, even with how fast we've grown, the level of care that our team pours into each individual family is absolutely remarkable. And I think a lot of people, because I'm the one that makes the videos, I make all the videos on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok, wherever else you see them. And so I think people associate my face with D1 Scholarship and think that I am the one that's doing all these incredible things. And that just couldn't be further from the truth. I'm the one who started the company a while back. And so, yeah, it's my face. But in terms of generating the results for people, it's all our team. Our team is just incredible. They're so good at what they do, and they put so much time and effort and care into this. And I think this year more than any other, I just have realized how lucky I am to have them and get to work with people like that, because I mean, we handle a lot of families, and to be able to operate at that level with that number of families is extremely impressive. And that's not impressive for me, that's impressive for them, for the team. And so just super grateful for what they do and the time that they put in. It's been an incredible year. We've helped so many families and generated so many dollars in scholarships, and more than just scholarships, but gotten kids to great schools that they're excited about. And we met amazing families and changed lives, and that's just the coolest thing. And so really grateful for 2024 as a whole. I'm going to make a video, like I said at the beginning of this one, I'm going to make another video that's going to be a little bit more actionable and tactical as to like what we're actually doubling down on in 2025. I think you guys will find that helpful, and that'll probably come out either this or next week, so you can keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, I hope you guys had a wonderful new year and holiday. I've never said this before, but I guess I will. If you want to like and subscribe, you can. And of course, if you want to work with us, there's a link in the description to book a call. You can schedule a call with us, and we'll get you on the calendar and walk you through what we do. Anyway, hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon.